Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dina McKinney, the Director of Partnerships at Dynamic Web. And with me today is Richard Lee, our Product Evangelist. Richard will take us through why PIM, or Product Information Management, is a key component of master data management. And over to you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Dina. Hello, everybody. Pleasure to webinar to you guys today. So master data is defined as the most essential data needed to be shared across an organization. That's kind of why the ERP was born. But when it comes to product information, these details may be limited to only a product name, a SKU, a description, and a stock level. And depending on who your audience of this product information may be, let's say outside of your organization, on the customer end, that could be B2C or B2B, this is often not enough information. But on the organizational side, other departments like the warehouse or procurement may also need additional information beyond the little bit that the ERP keeps. And that's, of course, different from information that other people may need. So how do you enrich the product catalog to support all of these different audiences? And the answer is with a PIM. All right, so let's dive into unpacking what a PIM is, and then going into the live demo later on to show you the processes in which that are involved with different players using the PIM for different audiences in order to enrich it around, let's say, categories, and enriching it around the different audiences that you might be pushing it out to, or also known as channels, as well as ensuring the quality of the enrichment, making sure that if you're asking for a file is uploaded. If you're asking for a URL is provided. So all the management features that we want to cover in here, about maybe a handful of them, I'm going to show you those as we unpack things. So let's start off here with a quote that I think really fits the bill, not just for manufacturers, but this one is for manufacturers, that 90% of manufacturers keep product information in more than 10 different systems. So in the concept of master data, that's where you have the ERP, and then that keeps data inside of it, of course, for a variety of different groups and teams within the company. But then you have specialty databases, let's say like a product information management database, the PIM, or the product catalog. The PIM is often a way of enriching that information in ways that are above and beyond what might be traditional ways of doing that. So examples of that. So first, let's dive into what product information is real briefly here. And it's a whole bunch of things. So let's say, looking at my desk here, I have a Thermos bottle, right? It's not the Thermos brand, but I'm using that freely. And it's, let's say, it's 17 ounces, or also known as 500 milliliters. And it's of a certain size, certain color, things like that. Those are all details of a product, and hence supporting the product information. But then there are other images that in my little description were not included, like maybe keywords used for what the website itself for finding products, or the searches happening on Google to find products. And then metadata, that's also related to that. Features like, I didn't describe the top of this water bottle. I didn't describe the lining of the water bottle. I didn't describe its ruggedness, things of that nature. Specs also necessary. Images, maybe videos, etc. So again, depending on the audience, let's say not included here, or here on the left, procurement details. That means the raw materials that went into making this product. For sure it's plastic, for sure it's some sort of type of paint, it's a type of metal, maybe aluminum inside the body of it. So those procurement details are necessary for the team that orders the materials needed to make these products in order to be able to manufacture them, hopefully on time. Right. So the traditional way for users who may be new to a PIM, and before they start using a PIM, they're doing it in a DIY fashion that is maybe supports the need today in some shape or form, with kind of ready-made tools or tools that already exist inside of a Microsoft environment, maybe with the addition of Dropbox, and in order to share it with a team. But in reality, this is a temporary band-aid because as this does not permit a scalable solution. If you've ever used Excel and now when you're in a column that exceeds your ultra wide monitor, let's say it's column AA or BB, now you're having to use the horizontal scroll. You've now exceeded the limit of Excel, in my opinion, to use it effectively for managing product information. If now not included in this mix here, let's say you're working with two or more languages, and two or more languages is kind of a lot of languages. So that's where the methods of using over-the-counter software don't support what a PIM really needs to have built in. The other place too that, or rather another audience for PIM is often for people pushing out to their own channels like B2B or B2C is search. So when users don't yet know your brand or your company or your website, your B2B or B2C site, they're going to do a search for the product. And that product information is really what they're searching for. Maybe I'm looking for a lightweight backpacking or camping water bottle that keeps things warm or cool depending on what's inside of it and has kind of a one-handed operation. I might type in that very long tail keyword expression. As long as that is sitting on someone's website with more or less the same words, maybe not in the exact order I put it in, that's going to be the result that shows up. So I'm painting here that the PIM is not only in support of the people inside of your company or B2B, B2C, but it's in support of your Google searchers who don't yet know you, but will find you because they are coming in with the intent to buy a product like the one that they may describe. Another nice quote over here is that conversion rates increase dramatically when a good amount of product information is available. And that goes for, again, the website and the shopping experience. So we know that, like, if we go and search for a product online, your results vary from one website to another. Some have lots of media, rich media, let's say video and images, but maybe short on descriptions or specifications. Whereas depending on the product, if it's maybe more of an engineered product, you're into the specifications, you're into the details that speak to what the product does and the environment that it operates in and all the details that it needs to possess so that you can make the right decision. In fact, the this whole concept of providing more information also reduces returns. So if all of you who load returns, one way of reducing the returns is providing as much detail of the product as possible. So that's what I'm just generally painting over here for as it comes to a PIM. So who needs a PIM? All right, so let's go over just each of these. It's basically, if you say yes to any one of these, you're basically a candidate for a PIM. So lots of products or lots of product changes. So they're changing very frequently for whatever reasons that may play into your world. Lots of users or lots of customer segmentations, lots of sources. So let's say you're a distributor. You don't manufacture the products, you get them from other sources. Those sources, let's say if you're dealing with electronics, consumer electronics, you're dealing with Sony, LG, Samsung, and the list goes on and on and on. And now you're having to synchronize all that data with information that you already have. It's can be very messy, it can be very difficult, and it can be very confusing, or you can easily lose track of versions or sources if you're doing it in a very manual method with over-the-counter software like Excel. And then if you have product complexity, like products not just in the, let's say you only have 4 products, but each product has maybe 4,000 fields associated with it. And we've seen this ourselves in the space of biopharmacy, where products and that product information, it's more than just a name, but it has so many details. And those details are not just text or numerical details that appear on the web, there are also associated PDF files coming in from third parties to attest to, the quality of the product, or how that product, integrates with other drugs or other bio material. So all of that, it depends on your environment, your industry, your vertical. You may need a PIM to handle the complexity. And then moving quickly here to, let's say, lots of distribution channels. Okay, so distribution channels would be your B2B, your B2C website, but they're now above and beyond that. If you want to do the third-party marketplaces like Amazon or Wayfair, they're expecting you to provide the information as XML documents. That in and of itself is challenging to format the documents accordingly and then integrate those that document and those fields with your product catalog. That's what's involved with that. And then lots of languages, 2 or more, but we being Dynamic Web coming out of Europe, out of Denmark, we're already thinking about multiple languages in the product catalog. So I'll unpack that for you when we get into that part of the demo in the live section. So if you answer yes to any one of these, a PIM is probably in your future, and if not already in play for you guys, you're probably using a blend of Access, Excel, some type of mini database coupled with the ability to share it with a bunch of people. It's not going to be a long-term effective solution, but I'm speaking to you guys to jump ship to move to a PIM. So typically in a PIM scenario, you have the ERP, which is the master data holder system of truth. Then you have a PIM that is outside of it and is a go-between, often because PIM users often are pushing to a e-commerce channel. So that's why in this diagram, we're seeing basically 3 pieces of a large puzzle. But if we unpack the PIM itself, now let's look at who or the whole ecosystem of a PIM. So, and in the center here, we're referencing, or this diagram references Dynamic Web, which is an all-in-one suite of the products shown in this wheel. So that would include integration, very robust content management system, e-commerce, and all the mechanics related to it, including B2B, B2C. So teams of buyers, quoting, all those things relegated to B2B, where B2C is a more one-to-one payment by credit card solution. And then marketing, that's what's unique about our solution. Before the PIM is definitely unique, but the marketing is a built-in tools to help with marketing aspects of running a website and getting more customers. It's very powerful. But PIM, this is what we're unpacking right now. The ecosystem of PIM involves different types of users on the back end for maintaining it. It's obviously different audiences, and let's point this out with the diagram we have in front of us over here. So on the left side here are sources where we're collecting the information from. So it's an ERP typically, but it's not limited to an ERP. If you're doing things using Excel and Access, we're going to use Excel and Access database to import information in. If it's coming in from suppliers because you're a wholesaler, then that might be a variety of file types. It might be maybe a SQL database if you're lucky, an Access file, or it's an Excel file. And you'll likely be unlucky because different suppliers may give you all the fields listed in the columns, or they're doing one category per sheet on the bottom of the Excel, which makes things even more difficult to deal with. So you're dealing with the file format in the mix of this whole ecosystem, which can be as challenging as well. Then once you get the information in, it's been aggregated. Now you have different folks on the team. And here we see like sales, brand manager, product manager, IT, marketing manager, but you also have other people. If you're dealing with languages, you might dealing with people who are translating it, or a translation bureau, third party. If you're dealing with images on the high end, then you're dealing with photographers, or a photographer singular. Again, there are people involved with enriching information, but they're not necessarily within your organization. And PIMs should be able to support people outside of the organization as well, because we're now, many of us, for reasons beyond the pandemic, we're virtual, and people are residing all over the place. And then where after the enrichment, it's like the selling of it. And selling is the broad term of it. It's not just the selling of it with transactions per se, but it's also the publication, more likely, of the pushing out of that information to various channels. So the concept of the omni-channel, where we have the e-commerce site, and that's something that you own. The mobile version of that, you own it as well. And we're not limited to the digital world, like marketplaces and additional channels that would be like Instagram. Let's say Instagram, it would be big on images and a little bit of text and certainly a lot of hashtags. Then imagine that information can be collected inside of your PIM, and juicy product photography made by the photographer, who might be external, is inside the massive database of product information. So when you're pushing out data to, or product information to a specific channel like Instagram, that data is already sitting inside there. You're just using either our tool to feed it into Instagram, or and therefore just publishing it in directly from the source without having to have any human intervention in between, as you would have to do if you're doing Instagram yourselves manually using your phone, for example. Right. But what I wanted to point out here is the last one here is print. We're not limited to the online digital world. It's also bringing the PDF catalog along for the ride. So whether it's a spec sheet or a multi-page catalog, it's something that can be generated as a result of data sitting inside your PIM that you've enriched. So you may have images that are e-commerce or web friendly, so they're 72 dpi, but you may have catalog ready images that are 600 dpi, many more megs in size, and therefore for that audience, they want and we need high res in order for it to print in high resolution. And even though it may be saved as a PDF and sent to the user to do the printing, it's nonetheless a high res version as well. So the management process of it, let's go through it here. So on the left here, we have the input, as I pointed out. It goes into the PIM, where between an import and an integration, so an integration would be a constant update from the ERP. And imagine that you have the ERP providing that information, and let's say the SKU or the unique product identifier, let's say alphanumeric code that represents that product. If you make a change, or let's say a change occurs inside the ERP, so it's affecting the product name, the SKU, the description, let's say something between the product name or description is changed. That change happens, it'll push it down into the PIM along with those changes, but it's not going to adversely or negatively impact any of the enriched information. So let's say I have product name is called Microlate, and that's the name of my water bottle. And the product name changes slightly to, for marketing reasons, they just change the name to distinguish it from competitor bottles. But then there's other additional information that we enriched it with. We enriched it with a bunch of YouTube videos. We enriched it with a brand ambassador that does a really cool video of him unpacking it and using it in the field immediately while camping. That type of information, whether it's videos or any other information, even if it's just data, is not going to be impacted by updates that happen from the ERP, because the ERP is only handling that basic product information, the product name, the SKU, and the description, maybe stock levels. It's not handling all the other bells and whistles that you described this product about. So that's a nice feature. And then distribution, again, is where it's going out to. So that just simplifies what we were before. But what I want to get to here is this one here, is that the multi-languages, right? That's something that's part and parcel to our product. We're not limited to the two handfuls of languages here, where the whole world is covered by our solution, but just wanted to point out that as well. So let's move along over here. So in the case of dynamic web, This is an e-commerce platform integrated, integrated to Nav, AX, Business Central, as well as F&O and beyond. The simplification of very complex back office is really what we're after. If typically in the first version of this that I showed you, we had three components. You had the ERP, you had the PIM, you had the e-commerce. That would traditionally require two integrations, one to the PIM and one to the e-commerce. With dynamic web and having it all in one under one roof, one suite, that's not just a bunch of components cobbled together to make it look like we're under one roof. It really is a single integration point that will raise the tide for not just the e-commerce experience, but also for product information enrichment, catalog enrichment, and other things, let's say like marketing, for example, that also benefits from that single integration point. Right, and here it is in a slide that we commonly use as well, where the PIM and the emphasis is over here, and it's driving the channels or the omni-channel here. And we are no longer limited to this here, let's say online store. That's so primitive, right? So I'll show you as we dive into things what other channels we have access to. So in bringing information into the PIM, it is by its nature a bunch of processes put together so that various different members on the team can begin to enrich the products with additional information that fall into a bunch of processes. This is just a handful of them, like categories, data quality, channels, media assets, and notifications, but there are many more, such as like supplier information. So let's say, again, you're not the manufacturer of these products. They're coming in from third parties. They're giving you all the information in many different files. Or let's say you want to put in all the competitor information, so that let's say you are a wholesaler and you're bringing in all the various competitor information so that they can see, right, this Asus 27-inch monitor is also similar to an LG and a Samsung monitor of the same size, so that you can better compare apples to apples. And again, like I pointed out in B2B, B2C, it's going to reduce returns if you have all this information. It may even reduce showrooming, that thing that happens or phenomena that happens when people are in one place. Let's say I'm at the Best Buy showroom and office. We're looking at products, and there's not enough product information printed out on spec sheets next to a certain refrigerator. I'm going to open up my phone. Maybe I'll go to Amazon and start looking at reviews there. That might keep me from buying at Best Buy, even though I'm physically standing in the store. But you see what I'm getting at here, that product information is what people are relying on wherever they may be. If it's in the store, have it on printed spec sheets that are powered by the PIM. If it's online, as a lot of things are, it's going to be on my phone or it's going to be on my desktop. And I want all this information. If there are videos, if there are customer reviews, if there are customer unpacking videos, I want to see them, as opposed to me going and finding them manually and going to YouTube and finding them manually. If you're the source of that, the single source of truth, including exposing that on your website, it's going to be ever more powerful, I think. All right, so let's dive into the live demo to unpack these. All right. So what I want to start off with here is how we have the channels. And the channels are the omni-channel, and it's no longer just like what I painted in the diagram having to do with, let's say, we had the print, we had the B2B, B2C websites, but then we have those third-party marketplaces, and they're growing. And there are marketplaces, but then there are places with just product information, not necessarily to buy. Let's say Pinterest is one of those places. Instagram, like I talked about, is one of those places. And Facebook arguably is one of those places, though you can add the ability to buy, as you can with Instagram and Pinterest, but it's easier to publish information, product information, as opposed to correlating it to buy, only because of the limitations of those platforms. So, but for other places where buying is part and parcel to the experience, like eBay, the Google shopping system, the Amazon marketplace, and so forth and so on, Channable is one of our partners, and our product communicates with Channable so that instead of you building the XML document for any one of these places yourselves, you can not only easily establish a new one. Let's say someone says, hey, we got to sell on Wish. And okay, here are the details of Wish. It's markets like beauty and health, electronics. Okay, it makes sense for us to sell there. Now, no one's going to be quitting on the team because it's going to be very easy to establish a connection to Wish through Channable and Dynamic Web, because they create the XML document per Wish's requirements, and then that's easily hooked up to our product catalog. Now, the big question is, do we have the information in our product catalog to support the audience of Wish, Instagram, and so forth? So let's look into that right now. All right, so let me log back into my back end. Hey, Dina, any questions pop in yet?
Yes, we do have a couple questions. I wanted to wait until you paused in between the demo here. So the first one is one of the attendees is in the manufacturing industry. So if they're just asking for kind of general use cases. So I think as you go through the demo, if you could just speak into maybe a couple points about things that you see when you're talking with customers, just specific to that industry and how PIM is really advantageous for them.
Okay, so in what industry again?
Manufacturing.
Okay.
And then the other question, I think you can, yeah, just kind of answer it as you go, would be someone had said when you were talking about, you know, the all-in-one offering and just dynamic web and how it's an e-commerce platform with the digital platform, including PIM. Do you need to also use dynamic web for e-commerce, or can you use PIM separately, and how does that work with integration?
Okay, sure. Let me just pause to answer that last one. And then the first one, I'll just say that we'll be diving into this, and I'll bring it out more on the manufacturing end and highlight the benefits. So regarding our solution, so the PIM, as with some of the other modules, but more with the PIM is capable of being separated from the whole mothership of our all-in-one solution in order to be as a standalone product and be like all the other PIMs that you can buy on the market that don't come with an e-commerce solution. So we can take off the e-commerce solution and any other features that are part and parcel to that world, and keeping the PIM as a separate unit, so that if you were logged into the back end like I am right now, instead of seeing all of these buttons that represent the other all-in-one features, the PIM is the only thing that you see. And when you land inside of it, you'll probably land inside of it, and the first thing you see are the dashboard and then all the other features of the PIM. The other thing too is that some PIMs need to have a front end programmed to speak to the web, and our PIM, even if it's a standalone, comes with a digital warehouse front end. And I'm going to paint this a little later for a specific section of my demo, but basically it's a kind of like an e-commerce front end that you can access information or product information from, and in this case it's showing images, or I can have detailed products here that I can find as well. And it uses the mechanics of an e-commerce like shopping cart, but it's simply using the concept of a basket. I'm collecting a bunch of images that I need to print in high res here on my end, on my printer, and I'm going to just collect some of these images and throw them in a basket, and then in one fell swoop or one click of a button, I can download all of those products or product information that were in my basket into a single PDF file. So that's that's what's included in the PIM. And so the big answer, or the shorter answer, is that the PIM can be chopped off into a standalone unit and integrate with your existing e-commerce solution, whatever that might be. And in order to enrich it for the audiences that are coming to that site, and above and beyond that, the people who are searching with intent on Google will find your site because of the information that you enriched your product information with, and are now available on Google as well. Hope that addresses your question. All right, so let's start diving in over here on things. Let me just going through what I want to show you on the script here. So, all right, so we're going to start off with category management. It's one of the processes that we're going to be unpacking today. So in the world of category management, let's start off under settings here. And then we're going to go here to e-commerce and then the product catalog, okay? And then something here called product categories. And so if you imagine, let's start using bikes as an example, because my demo has to do with bikes and it'll make a lot more sense. So no matter the bike, mountain bike, road bike, hybrid bike, coasting, cruiser, electric, on and on and on, there's an adjective to describe a bike. But there is, the components of a bike are pretty much the same as far as we name them, right? The ones that we know are the wheels. We have what's known as the crank set, the collection of things, the crank itself, the arm, the gears, the saddle or the seat. You have the frame, you have the type of fork that's the between the frame and the wheel. You have different types of handlebars. So in that collection of fields, if we're thinking like a database, is something that we can associate with categories so that when we're organizing and we're creating categories and subcategories, we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel, no pun intended, for every single type of category. We can kind of set up like, hey, we're keeping track of bikes as opposed to keeping track of helmets and accessories like gloves and shirts, etc., food. So if it's equipment, let's group all of these different fields into a product category that we call equipment. So I just want to show you that here. And I showed this to you so you can begin to understand the structure as we go through the other aspects of the PIM. You could see where these come into play. So let's say we call this product category an equipment rather, and it's a collection of fields, in this case 15. And it's can be like in database construction. You don't know this so much with Excel. It's either text or numbers, but if you use Access or created a SQL database, you're defining the type. Is it containing text? Is it small amount of text, like 50 characters, or is it a large amount of text, like 255 characters, as the frame is described here? So the name on the website is frame, the system name, or what the ERP or some other place, if for the PIM itself, is where the system name refers to. So like I described, we have the frame, we have the fork, we have the wheel, we have the deck, which is another component, which I'm not too familiar with, but we have brakes, we have gear, shifter, on and on and on. And in this case, they include, is a lock included? Is a light included? Is a monitor included? And because these are kind of like that question implies kind of a yes or no, the type of field is therefore just simply a checkbox. Whereas we have, and then here, external reviews, this is a small number of text. If I were to add a field here, let's say we call it maiden, right? Maybe it's not necessarily, let's say, you know what, let's say we'll call it this, LED light. It's, let's say it's definitely included with our product. So it's not a type of field where it's a checkbox, but it's going to be a specific, let's say, image. So, or better yet, let's call it, instead of LED light, let me call it, let's say, PDF, right? PDF and PDF, right? And then here, the field type, I'm choosing it for it to be a file, right? It could be a PDF file, hence the name PDF. But if I said that this were CAD, as in CAD file, it's still a file manager to locate what that file might be, but the file, just to emphasize, does not need to be a web-friendly file like a JPEG, a PDF, bitmap, PNG file. It could be any type of file that needs to be associated with it. So if it's a CAD file, or maybe you're using a specific type of program that generates a certain file type. So if you were in um, merchandising, you might be using special merchandising software that creates floor plans for merchandising. So that file type is found inside of your local drive, but we are simply associating it with the product category field called PDF, right? So these groups of fields are kept into a one grouping we call a product category, and then that starts to tie into the PIM here. So let me show you where that is. So we're still in the topic of category management. So let's look at it here. So I can have, in the case of dynamic web, I can have multiple PIMs. So because I might have multiple product catalogs, and they could be for different product lines or different languages for many different reasons, different types of users, commercial, industrial, consumer. So I might have different verticals for my products. So let's look at the one here called PIM, bikes and equipments. And then notice I have bikes. I also have components, the individual components. So it's the bike is kind of like the collection of it, all of those things, or I can have access to the parts, which would be components. And I'm not selling just bikes and its components. I'm selling clothing as well, and maybe accessories. Accessories would be things like bell or light, or the little computers that sit on bikes as well, not just your iPhone or Android, and as well as clothing. But as you can imagine, that bikes are different from clothing, even though they're used at the same time. They're used or they're described in different ways. So let's start unpacking this even deeper here. So in the bike category, we have it broken down by the brand. So in the case of Mongoose, which is a brand, K2, which is a brand, Mongoose has many more types of bikes that we carry and maybe that they make than, let's say, K2 bikes, which may be focused only on the road bike category, where Mongoose is focused on the many others. So if I break down mountain bikes here, I can begin to see the details. So all the way down, so in this tree structure, we have these branches, and then all the way down the leaf, if you will, is the product itself. But focusing more on the category management side of things, in each of these, let's say the parent is bike. The parent of mountain bikes is Mongoose. The parent of Mongoose is bikes. So let's right click over here. Let's go to edit group. This is where you're managing the groups itself and the categories associated with it. So the groups represent categories, but within a category, you have a collection of fields or attributes that you're also associating things with. So let's say in the case of bikes over here, it's the upper parent to all of these products and brands below. So if I go here to edit group, I see how this parent is using the product category, which is essentially a group of attributes. And we looked at that one called equipment. And equipment had something like 15 different fields inside of it. And it's now included in the category because it's in the properties of it. So if I look at Mongoose, does Mongoose include this? Let's take a look. It doesn't include it by name per se, but notice over here, this check mark says inherit fields from parent. So it means that it inherits the attributes, like in the case of equipment, from the parent, but it also inherits things that we've given it specifically for it as well. So in the case of a brand like Mongoose, there are brand details, and there are also attributes related to equipment related on the bike, and so forth and so on. So you can have infinite deep levels of product subcategories, but there can always be relating to the parent, the upper one like bikes, or the brand parent like Mongoose as well. So lots of details we can do inside there. All right. Now let's take a look at more of how we have the structure here. So when I take a look here, of, let's say, within Mongoose, right? And then within bikes. I'm looking at mountain bikes, and what shows up here would be what might be showing up on my website or other channels. I'm seeing products. So we see here like the product name at a glance. We see something called completeness, image, name, number, etc. These fields coming across here. And this is where we're entering into the world of another processes, an essential, if not main component of a PIM, which is kind of the data quality management or the product enrichment management as well. Because in ensuring that the quality is accurate, you're doing that in the same process of enriching the information. And we have a few things in play to help with making sure that the inputs that come in are they're in the proper syntax and the proper file type. And then the collection of information is building on the product catalog. So let's say we started with a blank slate that has no information. That's where this completeness state here, being both a color value as well as a numeric value, would show it at 0%. There would be no image, no description, basically nothing. We're starting from scratch. And let me give you an example of that. Let's go here to new product, and I'm just call it XYZ product, right? And I'll hit save and close, right? And now here XYZ, it's not 0% because I had to give it a name to save it, and therefore it satisfied 3% of the completeness. And all completeness is an at a glance tool or feature where I can see what percentage, and I could just see if I'm just looking at colors, and it's in the red zone, so it's nowhere near ready for going live or being published anywhere because there's limited information. And that control and what a completeness and what 100% consists of can vary from different places or different reasons. I might be enriching products for an engineering channel that has to have everything under the sun. So therefore, no matter what I hit it with in terms of marketing information, this completeness value barely moves because there's completeness related to different processes within the organization. So the audience is just people on the web. It might have X amount of information, whereas people who are looking at from an engineering perspective are going to have Y or Z level information on things. So it's different audiences all around the thing, not just in the final channel that you're pushing out to. It's even within the usage of the system as well. So that's what completeness is. But let's dive into a product that has a little more information and see what we begin to see. So this one has 91%. And it has some fields here showing right now. In this case here, it's not showing a whole lot of fields, but it is showing that we're capable of side by side enriching this product along the different languages that we're supporting. So if, let's say, in Danish over here, here's the product name in English, but we can just easily transfer the product name across in its original name, in this case being English, and I can move that across. But when we get to meta description, that's where the meta description information will need to be done in a different language in order for it to be more effective. Otherwise, you'll only be supporting English as a language in a French or German or Danish website. Right. And that's where, if in working with, let's say, an external person or a translation bureau that specializes in Scandinavian languages, then that's where I could take one product or hundreds or thousands of products and export them to an Excel file. And in exporting to Excel, it's Excel, not a CSV file within Excel, so that it formats the Excel in such a way, making it super easy for someone who is the translation bureau to open up the Excel file and say, okay, I'm doing it for these bikes in the meta description field only. And they provide that information in, and then you'll be able to quickly import that information back into things as well. All right, so let me show you and unpack a little further things here. So This is one way of going in to take a look at information. I dove into one specific product and I am capable of enriching it. Sorry, I keep getting logged out. Let me log back in. All right. So let me go back here to the PIM and back to warehouses. All right. And right, but let's paint another picture here. Let's say I'm in marketing and I want to make sure that any of these products before we go live need to be need to have some meta description so that Google is a little happier that we published products with meta descriptions, and it just helps with organization on the web. So let's say I could go in one by one and see what of these products is missing meta description information. Okay, this one it's missing it in all the different languages. Now I can go to road bike, but this is not a practical way of using a powerful tool like a PIM to do things a very, random way of finding products that are missing meta description. The good news is we have a way to quickly find a ton of information rapidly and easily, and that's with using a meta description. So we can create a query that's easy to create because you're basically finding or looking for fields of information that either contain or don't contain information. And then from that, you generate a query, and that query can be used all over the place. And I'm going to give you that example here. So meta description, I'm looking for any of the meta descriptions that are empty. Now you might have tagged certain products and said, all right, meta description, I put in X or I put in my initials. And that means that whoever's initials are in that meta description field for maybe the mountain bikes are handled by Richard, the road bikes are handled by Dina, the hybrid bikes are handled by Coy, and so forth. You can put in data in those fields and then find them later because you put them in there. Or from your integration person that said, hey, I imported all the things in there, but the products that I know have dirty data, we have a field that says dirty data. And if it's on selected yes, then you could find them that way as well. So there are ways of querying the information to find it. But let's say in this case, I'm choosing is empty. It's a condition that I can say that it has no data in that field. So by simply clicking on this query, it runs the query and it shows me all the products, in this case, 866 across my entire product catalog related to bikes that are missing information. Now, looking over here, let's say this one, notice the little triangle here, just to point it out, this is what we call variants. And this is where you have a product, kind of like a virtual product that has a number and identifier, and sometimes the other SKUs have different numbers to differentiate, but this is just pointing out how we have a blue, red, gray, and green version of the same bike. All the other characteristics the same, the color is simply different, and that's what variance is. But variance or a single bike all suffer or benefit from the same um, product information, and in this case, they're missing the meta description. So I don't have to go one by one, but now how do I enrich this? So without exporting this to an additional team to do the work for me, let's say I'm going to select a bunch of these to enrich the meta description in bulk, right? So it's called a bulk edit. So I've selected more than one. I click on bulk edit. It shows me that 5 are selected, these specific 5. And it could be 5, it could be 500, it could be 1,000, whatever. So if I click over here to what is it that I'm trying to edit? And in this case, it happens to be the meta description. So it's alphabetical order, or I could search for it. And here, let's just notch it up a little bit. There's meta description. And then I can put a value. So let's say this being the bikes, I'll say like, simple one, we carry thousands of bikes and products. Okay. And then in one fell swoop, I can save and close this, and it's going to apply this value of we carry thousands of bikes to all of these 5 products. And what's nice about the bulk edit, it's not just bulk editing of these specific products, but I can also add additional content, let's say description, that it doesn't really make sense over here because the description is specific to a product, and these are products that are wide ranging from each other. Some have to do with saddles, and one is a bike itself. But let's say I chose a document, and let's say I'm just associating our product line with every single product. I can now choose document, and in this case, it was already configured under settings as a file type or file manager. And I just click on browse, and it's searching basically our media assets manager, also called files over here. And I can go here and I can navigate to find images or PDF files that have the product catalog that I want to associate with it. So it's a PDF print catalog that I want to associate. I can do so here. I'm not doing so in this case here, but let's get rid of it. So let me hit save and close. I confirm it, and it applies it. And 5 of these are been added or have been removed from this because I've just added a meta description. And if you recall, it said 866, and it now says 861 minus the 5 that I had bulk edited to add that meta description to the product. Right. So that's a fast way. And let me wrap up here because I see that time is slipping away here, and I've just been enjoying talking about our PIM here. But let's go into media asset management real quick, and just to show you that this is the file structure of the server. So some of you might be familiar with something like a FTP program. It's kind of similar, except this is integrated so that you can access easily from the PIM. So you won't just have the PIM, you'll also have files if you have just PIM as a standalone with dynamic web. But you'll be able to access files very easily, and these could be web-friendly files like, the viewable ones like PDFs and graphic files, or they can be ones that are specific to an application or a CAD program or other type of file type that you can find. I'm just showing you here on what we can do with things that we can drag and drop files from your local computer. You can view these as thumbnails if they are viewable images. In this case, they are. And you even have, if they are viewable images, you have features like I can right click and I can edit, because if I look here, oh, this is kind of too large, or you know what, I don't want the pictures of the buildings, I just want the guy on our bike, so I can crop this person out or crop the buildings out. Right, so those are things built into the solution as well, and you can organize this by creating new subfolders as well. And notice that if I go back here to PIM, I'm right where I left off in the middle of a query. If I go back here to files, I'm right where I left off with managing some files and even creating a new subfolder with an open menu. So that's a nice time-saving feature there. And then last but not least, or a couple more things, I'm sorry, let's go to channel management. So back to the PIM, and let's close this guy up over here, and then channels. So channels, like we pointed with the use of channels, we can push out to Amazon very easily. We can push out to a print catalog. Maybe one of our partners has their own website, and we can send them an XML document that they can more easily upload, as opposed to sending them information any other way. And then feeds is what we have access to as well over here. And so that we're not just publishing in our own little world of our B2B website with our hundreds or thousands of customers. If someone says, hey, we need to enter the marketplace of Instagram or any other social media marketplace, then using the channels here, maybe connected with Channable as well, is going to make life much easier. And because your product catalog is being well enriched with the solution, you can provide specific images, specific product information to different channels as well. And then last but not least is notifications. And that's something built into the RPIM, is the ability to take a query, for example, and make it into an email notification. Not only can a query basically feed our dashboard, so remember that query called missing meta description, I can add that as a box over here. And if that number is, let's say, greater than my ability to change it in a day, let's say over 100, then I can have that box turn into a different color. So again, an at a glance feature, I can be like, oh my God, these boxes are in red. I need to address this right away because the numbers are too high and we can't go live with this information. And that's what the dashboard does. But the email notification allows me to send information. Oops, we don't want that. But let's say, let's go. Oh, here we are. I can do give it a title, give it a subject because it's essentially an email notification. And it can go to either myself as a reminder or someone on my team within my domain name, or someone outside of the company, that third party, the photographer or my assistant or a translation bureau. I can communicate to them using queries that I send. So let's say the query called here, personal. Um, any one of these here waiting for translation. I could put in the subject, need your help with translation, and then send it to the appropriate people so that your team is both aware of what's going on, is able to communicate, and you're able to communicate as an admin to them. And that information, as I've shown you before, you can export it to them, you can import it back in. You're not just limited to the people within, and with dynamic web, you're not just limited to using our solution only. It can be married to other solutions that you already have in play to begin with. So I will end it here, open to all the questions that you guys have, and we'll answer them with some demonstrations as well. So back to you, Dina.
Yeah, Richard, we did have another question that just came in a couple minutes ago, and it was going back to when you were talking about all the different ways to kind of understand or qualify, if you will, who needs a PIM and who can benefit from it. And they asked if there's a particular threshold or benchmark that you see, in kind of a range, just to kind of gauge, where they fit into that, whether it's through, number of channels or product SKUs. So if you could share your thoughts on that, I think that'd be helpful for them.
So the question is really like what channels are commonly used, or?
Well, I think just generally speaking, the threshold and benchmark they had asked about for just understanding, are they at the point where they could benefit from a PIM? So does it have to be a certain number of channels? Does it
Oh,
also have to be a certain number of SKUs and
got
so on
it.
and so forth?
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so let me go back to my deck over here, and I have a slide that covers it. Who needs a PIM? And I don't have any specific thresholds. It's really going to depend a lot on, well, it's only going to depend on your environment. But let's say, like I said, if you can answer yes to any one of these, then you're kind of a candidate for a PIM. But if you're also struggling with, because you're a wholesaler and you're dealing with numerous suppliers and sources, that's what that line item would be. Or let's say you're the manufacturer yourself, but because let's say you're a food manufacturer and now people need to know if it's gluten free and how many microbiotics it has and all these nutrient details that you didn't know that you needed to collect. That's where you're asking yourself, the question is like, is the way that we're managing it now by not using a PIM helping us? Is it benefiting us? Obviously it might be saving you money, but is it saving you time? Is it like, how is it scalable, right? Like the DIY method that I painted where you're using Access, Excel, Dropbox, SharePoint to collect that information. It might be at your disposal because you have Office 365, but is it the wisest use of varied siloed products to cobble together by also keeping another spreadsheet where all of this information is generally located? Is it really scalable to support people outside the company, inside the company? And let's say you had to drop the process for a little bit to focus on something else? Is it easy to pick up again? Those are the questions you kind of want to ask, because this is like a whole processes that is impacting a whole bunch of different types of businesses, industries, and everybody seems to need a PIM. And in my point of view, because like I was painting before too, that the PIM is supporting Google search as well. It's not just supporting someone in procurement to be like, what kind of aluminum are we getting? How thick, whatever. Does it typically come from these countries, etc.? So that's all relegated inside of the PIM itself, including like life cycle management. That's also part and parcel to things, which I didn't go over, but a whole other set of processes. So it's really a question of looking at all of these items over here and then beginning to ask the question, like, are we struggling with this? Are people leaving because they just don't want to do this part anymore? Is it scalable? How will we communicate the channels if we have information in fragmented silos of places of putting it in? Like the first slide said that 90% of manufacturers are keeping it in 80 different solutions, or many different solutions. So it's really something that I don't have benchmarks on. I wish I did. I just been unable to find any, but I do see that it is something that's really specific to your world and just the questions to ask. And that's where we can talk about things and look at the data and work on it together if you want to do that as well. I hope that
I think
answers
that's
some of it.
helpful. Thanks, Richard. And we did have a couple other questions come in, but we are at the top of the hour, so we will follow up with them separately. We hope everyone enjoyed the webinar and learned a few takeaways about why PIM is an important part of master data management. You will receive a recording of the webinar, and if questions arise, following looking at that or reviewing that, just let us know. Thank you again to Arbella for hosting us today. We appreciate our partnership and working with a leader in the Dynamics community. Stay well, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.